Welcome to Salcedo Paranormal, and tonight I am sharing true paranormal stories from the web. As always, you can find all shows along with links to social media and other ways to contact me at the podcast page, and that is salcedoparanormal.podbean.com. That's SALSIDO paranormal.podbean.com. Always happy to hear from you all, whether you have comments or questions or topic suggestions, or stories of paranormal experiences, whether they're your own or from others that you trust. Happy to either read those or have you join me on the show to talk about them. And there are a few different ways to listen to this show. Of course, there's always the live Discord streams, and you find that by going to the podcast page, and there's a link there that will take you to all my links, and there should be an invite over there. Also, I share it usually pretty regularly on Twitter and all the places. So, and also you can listen on the podcast and YouTube feeds. And then also every night at 6 p.m. Pacific, 9 p.m. Eastern, on the Troubled Minds Radio Network, KUAP Digital Broadcasting, you can hear 2 episodes of the show over there. So it's not live, but it is recent episodes that you can hear over there. So, and if you'd like to support the show, there are a few different ways to do that, in addition to listening. And that would be sharing the show with others, and also reviewing it on different podcast platforms. I've been forgetting to say that now for quite a long time, and then of course I have books out, paranormal fiction and nonfiction, that you can check out on Amazon, and then I also have a couple of donation links. So all those can be found in each episode description of the show, and also found on the Discord in the Stream Chat text channel. There's a pin post there, and I believe that covers everything there. So thank you all for being here, and let me get to these stories here, and we'll see how many we get through today. So let's see here. This first one says, I'm around 20 years old now, and my first paranormal experience happened about 5 years ago. My mom was driving us up to Canada, to visit family. We stopped at a Victorian-style inn on the way to stay for the night. I had a hard time sleeping that night, so I got up after a while and started walking around the second floor of the inn. I came across the stairs leading to the ground floor and glanced down to see a woman in a dress. I turned away and went back to our room immediately and got into bed. About an hour later, as I lay in bed, still awake, the woman appeared next to the bed and leaned over, looking at me. I closed my eyes and tried to stay still, and somehow fell asleep. In the morning, we went down to talk with the older couple who owned the place. That's when I noticed a picture of a familiar figure among the others that were obviously relatives of the owners. Still confused and frightened, I didn't say anything to anyone about what I had seen. This is the first time I have ever shared this with anyone. And that's the end of that story. And that is amazing in one way. I'm just wondering why the apparition seemed so interested in the writer, if it was because maybe no one else had ever seen them before, and they were trying to figure out if that was really the case, if they were seen. Or if it was just a case of wondering. Again, I think in a lot of cases when things like this happen, it could be because whoever the person, the writer or the person is seeing, that apparition, that spirit, whatever you want to call them, whatever they may be, they're wondering what people are doing in what could have been their home before. Or even just wondering what they're doing there anyway. Especially if it's a house that has been turned into an inn. I could see that as well. Maybe it's even a mixture of all those things. So, but I'm glad nothing else happened. And that's an amazing thing to have a sighting and then find the picture of the person that you saw as an apparition. That reminds me of a story that I've told before, but at my grandparents' house, it's not in the family anymore, but I used to go over there and visit a lot. A lot of people in the family did, and there was this one day my cousin and I were there, but back when we were kids, maybe I was maybe 15 or 16, so he would have been around 11 or 12, and we were at the house visiting, and we happened to go by the. There's this little hallway, and then in this hallway is the staircase leading up to the second floor. And we went by the stairs leading up to the second floor, and on the landing at the top, before the stairs turned, there was a woman in a blue dress with a white apron, and she was just standing there looking down at us and smiling, and so we saw this, and we had experiences before that were more frightening because they were our first, and for other reasons, and so we weren't really afraid of this, whoever this was. So, and this happened a few different times when we were there as kids. Well, like I said before, and when I've told the story before, we weren't the only ones in the family to see this apparition. A couple other people, my grandma and then also my dad, saw this woman in the same clothes and everything at different points in time over the years before my cousin and I ever saw her. Turns out there was one day my grandma went to visit the neighbors because everyone had become friends, my grandparents and the couple that lived next door, and she was over there visiting the wife of the wife of the husband and wife that lived over there, and the the neighbor wife, I don't know what the right word would be, she had to go to another room for a minute, and my grandma was just looking around, and she saw a picture of a woman in a blue dress with a white apron, and it was the same figure that she had seen herself in the kitchen of the house. And the neighbor came back into the room and said, "Oh yeah, that's my husband's mother, and she was the original owner of the house where you are all living now." And so we found out who it was that we were seeing. My grandma did first, and then of course years later, I did. My cousin and I did. Actually, I don't remember if I ever told him about that, but anyway. So yeah, it's that's always amazing when you get that verification like that. And I don't think it happens all the time, which is what makes it amazing when it happens. So, neat story there. I don't blame the person for being frightened, but at the same time, just a neat experience, sounds like, overall, aside from being frightened. So, something to look back on anyway and think about. So, going to the second story here. Let's see here. Okay. This one is a amazing one in that it involves possibly a couple of different things here. So I'll just start reading it and we'll go from there. This one says, "I don't know if this is paranormal, but it was still very strange. My friend and I met up one day to go for a walk through a small wooded area, as it was a bright and sunny day. Even so, it was a strange walk from the beginning. There was hardly anyone else in the area, which was highly unusual based on previous visits to the area. On our way to a favorite spot of ours on top of a hill, we stopped in a bushy meadow because we were hearing strange noises coming from the trees in front of us. They sounded like frogs and birds all mixed together, but it also sounded like a person trying to make those noises. Speaking of noises, there's my cat Logan playing in one of our boxes. Anyway, though we didn't see anyone else there. I took out my phone, hoping to capture whatever was making the sounds, and started heading back the way we had come. Ahead of us, on the path, we saw a toad staring at us. Despite not knowing if it was safe, my friend decided they had to pet it. As soon as he did, it started raining hard. It was pouring down on us, and then lightning and thunder filled the sky as well. We ran back home as fast as we could. I still have no idea how to explain what happened that day. And that's the end. And so, were they hearing a cryptid of some kind? And then did this cryptid or shapeshifter or whatever it was somehow influence the weather? Did it basically not want to be disturbed? I mean, was that toad? There's the real question here, I think, in a way. Was that really a toad that they saw and that the friend actually pet? I'm guessing just for a second before it started pouring on them. That is a wild experience, and I can see how some people may think or say it seems unreal. It seems like it must be a fake story, but that's not the first time I've heard of strange weather happening out of nowhere, and maybe even I don't know if I've ever heard of that in relation to a sighting of a cryptid, but if you just think of the way weather can be sometimes, where it'll suddenly make turns that don't make sense when it comes to storms or whatever, different kinds. Or back when we did the missing 411 episode, talking about how the weather sometimes seemed to just show up out of nowhere and basically stop any kind of a search effort or prevent it from even really starting at the time. So I really wonder if there's something to that. I mean, if we're dealing with beings that are made of or can manipulate energy, why couldn't they manipulate the weather in some way? So I don't know, but that's an amazing story. I would wonder if those two if the writer and their friend ever went back there, and if they did, then maybe nothing happened. Because I'm guessing they would have written about that. So I'm guessing they either didn't go back to the area, which I don't blame them, or they did, nothing else happened. I don't know, but that's quite the story. So, yeah, I found that a little while back. These first couple were stories left over from the last time I did a True Stories show, and still remember that one, even just when I started reading it. So, anyway, moving on to the next story here. Let's see here. All right. Let me find. Okay, there we go. Here it is. This starts the stories that I found today. This one says, although I've seen some things for a split second while waking up, I've always written them off, especially since I was alone during these experiences. I've just never believed much in the paranormal. This changed about 3 years ago. My boyfriend and I were in the living room, sitting on the couch and talking, with the TV on low in the background. We both fell silent for a moment, and I laid down on the couch. I can't talk tonight. Anyway, that was when I heard what sounded like a child saying something like, mm-hmm. But it wasn't the TV or my boyfriend, as he was sitting still. I asked him if he heard the sound, and he asked, the mm-hmm sound? I didn't know what to think. There were no children in the house. It was around 1 in the morning, and in the middle of winter. We looked all around the house, inside and out, but found nothing. I know this isn't the most dramatic experience, but it was still amazing to me, as I could not explain it, and I was not the only one who heard the sound. So that's where that one ends. That is, I'm always interested in those stories that happen to people that are somewhat skeptical of the paranormal. and basically maybe change their mind a little bit. Even as something as simple as just a sound of like a child's voice just for a brief moment. It makes sense that it would be surprising if there were no children there. Although I wouldn't be surprised if it was some kind of a residual sound, or maybe even some kind of a time anomaly where I'm wondering the history of the house or the area, if there was another family there before that had kids, and there was just some weird kind of micro anomaly in terms of time and in sound, and that just came through just that for that real quick, maybe few seconds. I don't know. That seems possible, especially if nothing else really happened there. So, yeah, I don't know with that one. But move on to the next story here. And let me see. Okay. A couple of stories tonight involving sounds, really. A few of them, actually. This one says, I'm hoping to find answers to what I experienced. I had stopped at a church in a town, I don't remember the name of the town now, where we were on vacation. After sitting down on one of the benches, I started hearing voices whispering in my ear, though no one was around me. I couldn't make out any words. I've searched around online, but can't find any similar experiences. And that's where that one ends. It's amazing to me when I find these stories that sort of mimic things I've experienced. That I bring them up every time it happens, just in case someone else listening at any point in time does have a similar experience, just so that everyone knows that even if it seems like a one-off experience to you, whether because of what you've looked into or just what you've experienced, it may not be the case. And so I say that because, so my parents got divorced when I was a kid, and then years later they each found someone else and married them. And so in the house that used to be my dad's and then stepmom's, I used to stay over there pretty often, and as a teenager, and then going on through the years. And this one time I was there, everyone had left the house. They were outside, or I can't remember I think they had gone. I think they'd left just for a minute to go do something, and then they were coming back, if I remember right. And so I was inside. My dad was going to take me back to my mom's house that day as well. So I was just getting everything put away, all my stuff. And I heard this whispering. It sounded like two young girls just whispering and laughing, but I couldn't make out any words being said. And the sound was coming from the like halfway up the stairs going to the second floor. And I could see into that stairwell from where I was at, and of course there was no one there, and I knew there was no one in the house. And there were not two girls there, especially. I do have a sister, but it wasn't her. And I'm trying to think if she would have been not too old. These sounded like they were a little bit older than her, I think, if I remember right. This all happened a good 20 years ago now, or more. But, so I heard these voices, and I wasn't really afraid. Again, by this point, I'd already had many other experiences. But, and so I heard these voices, and as I was getting everything packed up again, and then they were there for a little while, and then they stopped. And not long after that is when my dad and everyone got back to the house, and then that was it for that day. But it happened 2 more times. Those same voices happened 2 more times to me in that house. One other time, again, while there was no one else in the house, everyone was outside that time. That's what I was getting mixed up. The second time, there were other people that were home, but they were outside doing yard work of some kind, I think. And I was actually getting unpacked. I was from getting there. And as I was doing that, I was in the front like sitting room kind of area. I heard the voices again coming from this vent that led upstairs to my younger sister's room. But she wasn't there again. And these didn't sound like her either. And I just stopped and listened, and they went on for a little while, and then they stopped. And not long after that, someone came in the house. It was like whoever they were, they knew when someone else was going to be coming in or coming nearby. And I was the only one that was supposed to hear their voices for some reason, somehow. And so that was the second time. The third time that happened, everyone was home. It was late at night, and I was in the guest room that was like that I used for my bedroom when I was there sometimes, and laying in bed, and I could hear the voices. They started up again, but this time they were in the space just below the ceiling of the room. So it was really amazing. But yeah, so the whispering thing, that's a real thing, and I don't doubt that this happened to this person, this writer. So amazing stories there. Again, so many of them involving sound today. Seem to be a common theme there for a lot of these stories. So, in fact, let me see. Yeah, all of them today, I think, just about. So, but yeah, that's all we have for today. I'll be back tomorrow. Let's see here. I'm just checking on this. Okay, the first one doesn't involve sound, but all the rest did. Anyway, just had to check on that. But yeah, thank you all for being here and listening. And I'll be back tomorrow to cover paranormal news on the next episode of Salcedo Paranormal. Thank you all again for listening. Take care.